The needle flashed, a silver blur against the worn fabric, mirroring the frantic rhythm of Judith's stitches. 10 children, 6 daughters for sons, a tapestry woven with the threads of poverty and relentless work. Her mother, hunched over her own sewing, snatched half of Judith's meager earnings, a silent transaction etched in the lines around her eyes. 19 years old, Judith's reflection in the cracked windowpane showed a woman of decent features, hair meticulously braided, a fragile prettiness battling the grim reality of her life. Philadelphia held no promise of a husband, no gentle hand reaching for hers. One evening, under the sickly yellow glow of a kerosene lamp, a scrap of newspaper caught her eye.
Rancher in Kansas City, Kansas, seeking a wife. Contact Herschel Harris at the post office.
The ink, sharp against the newsprint, pressed like a lifeline into her palm. For 3 days the clipping nestled in her purse, a secret hope against her chapped skin. Then a mountain of unfinished dresses and her mother's sharp displeasure pushed her to the edge. She wrote a letter, her hand trembling slightly.
Mr. Harris, I will be in Kansas City May 12th. The train arrives at 4:30 p.m. If you are on the platform, I will disembark. Otherwise, I will remain on the train. Judith Porter.
The train journey was a 3-day odyssey. The initial crush of bodies pressed against her, the air thick with the smells of sweat and coal dust. Then a hand, calloused and strong, reached out. A cowboy, his eyes the color of a summer sky, offered his seat.
Ma'am.
His voice was rough but kind.
You don't want to stand the whole way, do ya?
No, sir.
She breathed, her cheeks flushed. He stood, his silhouette a stark contrast against the grime-streaked window.
Sit here.
I'm going to Kansas City,
she said, managing a small smile, a flicker of hope in the weary landscape of her face.
Lester Jones.
He said, extending a hand that engulfed hers.
Got a ranch near Amarillo. If things don't work out for you, look me up.
He moved to the end of the carriage, standing as tall and resolute as a sentinel against the westward setting sun. Relief washed over Judith as people disembarked at the next stop, allowing Lester to find a seat. The sway of the train, the ceaseless clicking of the wheels, became a hypnotic rhythm, punctuating the long, arduous hours. The sleepless nights, spent pacing the aisle, were a physical manifestation of her anxiety and fierce determination. Each step forward was a testament to her unyielding spirit. The journey, hard and unforgiving, mirrored the life she was leaving behind, yet also held the promise of a new dawn. The Kansas City platform throbbed with farewells. Lester's nod, a fleeting image swallowed by the bustling crowd, a mother's embrace, a cowboy's swagger, a quick handshake dissolving into the throng. Then, a man materialized from the haze, overalls stained with grime, a smile revealing teeth like neglected tombstones.
Judith.
His voice rasped, a gravelly whisper against the platform's cacophony.
Yes.
Wagons this way.
He turned, already moving, a blur of work-worn denim. Her valise felt leaden as she lumbered behind him, the gap widening with every loping stride. Judith felt the muscles in her neck tighten, a pulse tapping fast beneath her skin. She followed, but the distance between them suddenly felt like a canyon.
Just toss it in back.
The wagon, a skeletal frame of weathered wood, smelled of sun-baked dust and something else, something ancient and feral. She placed her bag amongst the meager contents, then stood, taking him in. The stench of unwashed sweat and stale tobacco clung to him like a shroud. His beard, a tangled mass of gray and brown, framed a face etched with hardship. Those teeth.
What have I done?
She thought.
Climb in.
The command was abrupt, devoid of invitation.
Let's go.
Judith hesitated. The wagon looked like it had once carried the dead. Reluctantly, she settled onto the hard wooden seat. The snap of Herschel's whip cracked like a gunshot.
Get up.
He roared at the mule, a guttural bellow that vibrated through the wagon. The mule lurched forward, a shuddering start. Silence descended, broken only by the rhythmic creak of the wheels and the rasping breath of the mule. Then, a low, guttural rumble, a plume of noxious gas rising in a miasma of decay.
That's one.
Herschel's voice was flat, devoid of explanation. Judith stared, bewildered. The creek, a thin ribbon of muddy water, snaked through the parched earth. The mule balked, its hooves planted firmly.
Go on.
Herschel urged, the whip cracking again, this time closer. Nothing. Herschel dismounted, his movements fluid despite his bulk. He looked the mule directly in its stubborn eyes.
That's two.
The butt of his pistol thudded against the mule's flank. The mule, jolted into submission, plodded into the water. A ramshackle cabin, barely clinging to the dusty landscape, appeared in the distance. Then, a sudden, sharp rattle. A snake, coiled and ready. The mule, startled, spun violently, nearly throwing Judith from her seat. Herschel descended again, his movements quicker, more tense.
That's three.
This time, the pistol barked. The mule collapsed, its legs kicking spasmodically, the wagon bucking wildly. Judith pressed a hand to her mouth. The smell of blood and burned powder twisted in the air. Herschel holstered the pistol without a glance back. Judith, heart pounding, stood, voice raw with outrage.
What are you doing?
Herschel looked up, his face impassive, his eyes cold.
That's one.
What?
Her voice, a brittle crack in the night air, barely registered above the rasping of crickets. His gaze, cold and flat as a tombstone, pinned her. The memory of the mule's vacant eyes, the sickening thud, slammed into her. She didn't need words. He'd shot the mule, the glint in his eye promised the same for her. Leaping from the wagon, the rough-hewn wood splintering under her weight, she snatched her bag, a worn leather satchel, its straps cutting into her palms, and fled. The dust of the road exploded behind her, a gritty cloud swallowing her heels. Herschel's yell, raw and mocking, trailed her like a curse.
That's two. And you owe me $25.
The train station loomed, a skeletal frame against the inky sky. The scent of coal smoke and stale urine stung her nostrils. At 1 a.m., the wooden bench was cold, unforgiving. Tears, hot and bitter, streamed down her face, each drop a silent testament to her despair. She huddled there, the rough grain of the wood digging into her cheek, until sleep, merciful and shallow, claimed her. Adam, the train master, his face etched with the weariness of sleepless nights and endless departures, loomed over her, his shadow falling across her like a shroud.
What are you doing here?
His voice, gruff but not unkind, cut through the pre-dawn quiet.
When's the next westbound train?
Her voice was hoarse, ragged.
2 days.
His gaze, assessing, swept over her. She shivered, the chill seeping into her bones.
Is there a place to stay?
He studied her, a slow appraisal that left her feeling exposed, vulnerable. Then, a curt gesture.
Boarding house. End of the street.
Thank you.
She whispered, relief a fragile thing.
Wait.
His bellows stopped her. She turned, her heart hammering.
That information cost you 50 cents.
His hand shot out, palm up, expectant. She stared, aghast. 3 dimes, her entire remaining coins, lay nestled in her coin purse. A spark ignited in her eyes.
3 dimes.
She said, her voice firm.
And 20 cents costs for your lack of upfront pricing.
She slapped the dimes into his hand, the metallic clang a defiant echo in the stillness, and walked away, the bitter taste of injustice lingering on her tongue. The chipped paint of Wilma's boarding house flaked like sunburnt skin under the midday glare. A faded sign, creaking gently on its rusty hinge, announced its name. Judith's knuckles rapped against the warped wood of the door. A voice, gravelly as river stones, rumbled.
Come, it's open. Wilma filled the doorway, a broad woman whose blue plaid dress strained at the buttons. A white apron, stained a mottled brown, hinted at battles waged with gravy. Her smile, though, was genuine.
Well now, what can I do for you, dear?
Judith's plight tumbled out, a rush of words punctuated by weary sighs. Wilma's gaze, shrewd and kind, settled on her.
Room's ready. Right this way.
Upstairs, the air hung thick with the scent of dust motes dancing in the single shaft of sunlight. The room was small, cramped, but a bed, a dresser scarred with years of use, and a dark armoire offered sanctuary. Judith's throat tightened.
I need a bath.
Wilma chuckled, a sound like warm bread baking. She led Judith to the backyard, where a galvanized tub, nestled amongst overgrown herbs, sat like a forgotten relic. A tattered curtain, strung between two weathered posts, offered a semblance of privacy. The sun warmed the water, a sluggish shimmer on its surface. Judith stared, a silent prayer rising in her chest.
Breakfast's on me.
Wilma declared, her voice booming over the chirping crickets.
Haven't had much since that biscuit yesterday.
Judith managed a shaky smile. She wanted to hug the woman, but held herself still, gratitude simmering beneath the surface. Later, the lye soap stung, raw against her skin. The water, though still shockingly cold, washed away grime, leaving her feeling scrubbed raw, reborn. She scrubbed her clothes until the gray water turned black. Her damp dress, strung on a line swaying gently in the breeze, held the promise of fresh beginnings. Back inside, the rhythmic scrape of Wilma's scrubbing brush resonated through the small kitchen. Wilma, on her knees, looked up, startled. Judith asked, her voice echoing the woman's kindness.
Need a hand?
Bless you, dear.
Wilma replied, passing an old towel to Judith with a grateful nod. The quiet rhythm of their work created a space, a shared understanding. It was then, amidst the scent of soap and the squeak of the floorboards, that Wilma discovered the train master's treachery. Judith's tale had become their shared burden, and in the shared work, a small, hard-won hope began to bloom. The quiet rhythm of their work created a space, a shared understanding. Judith caught Wilma's eye and offered a small smile, unspoken gratitude, laced with something warmer. For the first time since stepping off the train, she didn't feel entirely alone. The kitchen was a haven of polished wood and morning light, the scent of soap and bacon still clinging to the air. Judith exhaled, shoulders softening. For the first time in days, the world felt steady. Sunlight sliced through the window of the boarding house kitchen, illuminating the spotless pine floor. Wilma, a whirlwind of starched gingham, slammed the last breakfast dish into the cupboard.
Come on, girl.
She barked, her voice sharp as a butcher's knife.
We're getting your money back from that weasel at the station.
Judith, startled by the raw intensity, swallowed hard and followed Wilma out into the dusty street. The train station office smelled of stale cigars and desperation. Adam, the station master, slumped in his chair beside a clattering telegraph machine, snoring softly, his jowls quivering. Wilma's fist slammed on the counter.
Adam!
She roared, the sound echoing in the cramped space.
You no-good weasel!
Adam's eyes snapped open, his body jolting upright before collapsing back into the chair with a thud. He looked up, dazed, at the furious woman looming over him.
This young lady,
Wilma hissed, pointing a finger at Judith.
says you cheated her out of 50 cents.
Adam tried to rise, his legs wobbling beneath him.
What?
He stammered, his face a mask of panicked denial. Wilma leaned in, her spectacles glinting.
You know exactly what. I warned you last week. Cheat again, and I'll.
Her voice dropped to a menacing whisper.
I'll pluck your heart out and feed it to the pigs.
Adam finally scrambled to his feet, his eyes darting between Wilma's steely gaze and Judith's apprehensive face.
I didn't cheat her.
He mumbled.
I charge for information. Professional information.
Wilma's lips curled into a sneer.
Professional information? The next train's arrival time? Something you're already paid to know? In my town, that's common courtesy. You will give her 50 cents.
Now.
The word now hung in the air, thick with unspoken threats.
His voice trailed, swallowed by the insistent clang of the train yard.
She only.
I said 50 cents.
Now. Adam, cheeks burning, fumbled 5 dimes into Judith's outstretched hand. Judith's head shook, a curt dismissal. 2 dimes clattered back onto the grimy platform.
No, girl.
She said, her voice low and firm.
That's for being a thief.
A ghost of a smile played on her lips. A bond forged in the dust and grit of a Kansas City railway platform. The whistle shrieked, a mournful cry announcing the westbound train. Judith climbed aboard, the metal groaning beneath her weight, the future a vast, uncertain landscape stretching before her. 36 hours later, the train lurched to a halt in the pre-dawn gloom of Amarillo. 4 a.m. The air hung heavy, thick with the smell of creosote and dust. The wooden bench was cold against her thighs. The vast emptiness of the station echoed the loneliness in her heart. The silence stretched, broken only by the distant rumble of a freight car. Finally, at 8 a.m., the station master, a man whose face bore the etchings of countless sunrises and sunsets, arrived.
For a clock train, I presume?
His voice was gravelly, seasoned by years spent under the unforgiving Texas sun.
Yes, sir.
She replied, her voice barely a whisper.
Could you tell me where to find Lester Jones?
He pointed a calloused finger towards the town's heart.
Dry goods store. He's there now.
The dry goods store smelled of burlap, leather, and something faintly sweet, like dried herbs. Then she saw him. Tall, lean, his eyes crinkling at the corners as a slow, delighted grin spread across his sun-weathered face.
Well, I'll be hornswoggled.
He boomed, his voice a rich baritone.
I never figured on seeing you again.
His gaze softened.
You said to look you up.
He paused, a hint of sadness in his tone.
Didn't work out in Kansas City, huh?
Judith looked down at her worn boots, the dust swirling around her ankles.
No.
She said quietly.
No, it didn't.
The Amarillo air, thick with the scent of dust and mesquite, hung heavy as Lester crossed the cracked pavement. He enveloped Judith's hand, his calloused fingers engulfing hers. The warmth of his touch spread through her, a slow burn starting in her toes and blossoming upwards. His eyes, the color of worn leather, crinkled at the corners as he said.
Welcome to Amarillo, ma'am. It's good to see you again.
He took her heavy bag, the weight lifting from her shoulder as surely as the tension from her spirit. The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty street, painting the buildings in shades of burnt orange and faded brick. He gestured towards a nearby bench, its weathered wood worn smooth by years of sun and rain.
Now let me see if I've got this right.
Lester began, his voice a low rumble.
Kansas City, was it? A fella you were going to marry?
Judith's gaze dropped to the worn fabric of her skirt. A single, hesitant nod.
And he wasn't exactly a prize, was he?
Lester's grin was slow, a genuine thing that crinkled the corners of his eyes. A breathy laugh escaped Judith.
Both mean and nasty. A real prize.
He chuckled, a sound that resonated with the dry earth. He leaned closer, his eyes searching hers.
Well, I ain't saying I'm perfect, but...
He paused, his gaze unwavering.
I like you, Judith. A whole lot. Would you let me court you?
A shy smile bloomed on her face, chasing away the shadows of her past.
I'd like that very much.
Good.
He stood, his hand hovering near hers.
Got a place to stay? Or...
He pointed down the street towards a modest but neat little house.
My sister and her husband live just there. Come on.
He offered his arm, the gesture both kind and courtly. For the first time in weeks she wasn't running.
She was choosing. She took it, and together they walked into the fading light, leaving the weight of her past behind them.
This story reminds us that kindness isn't weakness. It's courage in its purest form. If Judith's journey moved you, tap like and subscribe to follow more tales of resilience and grace. Caught the hidden joke? Type yes in the comments. We're watching. Got a story idea of your own? Drop it below, and we'll let you know when it comes to life.